The really blurred line is always what is a public picture and what isn't. If they're out doing an engagement, what kind of engagement is it? If I was advising them, I would say expect that if you are in public, you will be public property, and you have to get used to the fact that the UK operates in a very different way to the US.
Front page of the Times today is news from the palace, and it'd be really interesting if you could explain how news gets sent from the palace out to journalists and ends up on the front page of the newspaper, that the king is sort of still prioritising Prince William, that he's got warm feelings about Harry and Meghan coming home, but that his priority is, of course, his job and his duty to the monarchy.
Well, the first thing to say, I thought the announcement from the Sussexes was extremely well handled because it hadn't leaked. And actually, there's a tradition of big stories in the royal circles leaking. So the fact it came out with nothing beforehand was quite interesting and maybe an indicator of what's coming down the track. Yeah, I mean, the palace, as I remember from my time, can never really be in a position like Number 10 where it comments on the record on everything, because if they did, that's all they would do. So there's a very sophisticated system of briefing off the record and giving guidance. And that's what we've seen over the last couple of days, that the palace, Buckingham Palace, has attempted, I think, very successfully to guide as much as possible as to what the implications will be of the return of the Sussexes, what it may mean for their role, what it may mean for how the king perceives their kind of role going forward, and of course, relations with the family. So early indications are that this is being managed, I think, pretty well.
There are some hints of a little bit of disharmony, though, or sort of a confusing timeline, that the king only found out about this supposedly on Sunday, that the Prince and Princess of Wales were informed of the move. We don't know how or when that news was communicated. At the heart of this sort of very big story is ultimately a family, and their relationships are central to it.
Yeah, when I first heard it, I did wonder whether there might have been something to do with the work commitments of either Harry or Meghan. And we hear this morning that possibly there's a film that she's going to do in the UK, so that might explain it. Obviously, putting the children into school is a big step, and I suspect a clear indication that they're going to be here for the duration. I think some people are thinking it might be just appearing for a bit, but I think they are putting roots down here again. But yeah, the really big issue is how long is it going to take to rebuild relationships that have been fractured, frankly, not just in the family, but in the press and more widely. And that's going to be the challenge, I think, for the Sussexes. How do they slowly rebuild relations that have been damaged? And I think the press is, we can talk about the press separately, but I think in any family, and it's just a fact, in any family, fractured relationships take time. And I think they've got to give time to, and it may require apologies, it may require people to actually to be quite open with each other about how they can move forward from here.
Do you think that process will start now?
Well, I hope so, because I think a lot of British people probably feel it's the right thing to do. I think there is residual sympathy, particularly for Prince Harry, for everything he went through. But I think there's also, the public doesn't have the appetite. It's quite clear from the polls, for instance, for a single penny of money to go on securities. I think the public has quite a strong view about what they want to see, but also what they think is a line in the sand. The press is a different matter. Harry has got some very significant fractured relationships that are going to be challenging.
And the press, no doubt, there is already so much public appetite about this story, about the couple, about the royal family. Do you think he's going to take proactive steps to try to repair relationships with the press that he has at times taken to court, described them as toxic? We know that he has at times, furious relationship with the press.
Well, my main concern, if I was advising them now, would be just to remind them that there's a huge difference between, frankly, what is still a pretty benevolent and benign press in the US and the UK. The UK press has not changed since they've been away, and they'll be seeking to get under their skin, and they'll be seeking to do what the press does in the UK, some people might say very effectively. And I think they've got to have people around them who can advise them from a UK context rather than a US context. It's a very different world here. And I think having people who really understand how to manage those relationships is going to be vital. I'm not suggesting, obviously, a separate court for them, but I would expect they'd have people they would want to appoint, they may have done so already, who can help them navigate what is going to be a delicate process.
So you think they'll have a team around them?
I'm sure they will do. They probably have a team around them already. But of course, that raises another issue, which is both the palace and the Sussexes have to find a way of managing the fact that they're going to have to find a way of at least comparing notes as to what both parties are doing, because they will be out there doing stuff, Harry and Meghan, as well members of the royal family. That's got to be managed quite carefully.
So you think Harry and Meghan are going to have in some form a public-facing job?
Well, I'm sure the guiding principle of you can't be half in and half out will continue. But the fact is, they are major international figures and they both have commitments, Invictus Games being one of them, the work that Meghan does with children and families. They'll want to continue with that, but they'll have to do it in a way that doesn't blur the lines. And I thought it was very interesting, the message coming out from the palace overnight, that the King's priority is the Prince of Wales. And that, I think, says it all.
There is going to be a little bit of a difference, is there not? I mean, it's understood that Harry and Meghan are not going to publish photographs of their children, which then puts different onus on the press because they won't then be able to do the same.
Yeah, I'm sure the press will respect that. We haven't seen any photographs of the Wales' children going into and out of school. It's well known they take them to school. I'm absolutely certain that that will continue with the Sussexes, as it should do. The really blurred line is always what is a public picture and what isn't. If they're out doing an engagement, what kind of engagement is it? If I was advising them, I would say expect that if you are in public, you will be public property, and you have to get used to the fact that the UK operates in a very different way to the US. So as a family, I'm absolutely certain, and we had this with the young princes when I was at the palace, the press will respect their privacy. They will not take the same view when they see the Sussexes out and about, either on public or quasi-public duties.
Yeah, and we don't know what school the children are going to, and it may never become public knowledge deliberately. You are also relying on the infrastructure of the school, so the other parents at the school gate. You need an awful lot of people not to say anything in order to safeguard privacy.
Yeah, it's tough, but actually it worked with the young princes. It was another time in Italy. They were at Eton, and Eton was very well set up for that sort of thing. But I actually do feel that the British people completely respect that, you know, if you're born into the royal family as a child or grandchild, then you have a complete right to privacy. And challenge is going to be if they're still in the UK when those children are teenagers, all bets are off.
Yeah, well, as we've seen play out before. Simon, thank you so much for your time. Simon Lewis, the former Royal Communications Secretary to the late Queen Elizabeth.
Just quite fascinating on the relationships that Harry and Meghan are going to have to evaluate, I suppose, as they make this move. And I guess there's this kind of feeling that Prince William is kind of facing these calls to hold out an olive branch, as it were, and try to, quote, be the bigger person in what seems to be a bit of a fracture between the two brothers, because there is this kind of romantic story arc, isn't there, where the two brothers reunite.
Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Where the two brothers reunite and we kind of see it play out and come to full completion, that they're sort of working together again.
But I also think there's real desire for anyone who's had any form of sort of falling out with a family member or a friend. There would be a desire for there to be some kind of reunion, surely.
Yeah. You would hope so. You would hope so. Do you see there was a report in the New York Post that the Duchess of Sussex, that Meghan, had tried to take over the Senate seat held by Kamala Harris ahead of the 2020 presidential election. They've kind of denied it all, of course. But it did strike me, would Meghan ever go for politics?
That would be extremely complicated.